afternoon with Vivian Ratliff. She lives in 12 miles south of Battle Lake, and she's agreed to come in and speak with us about her life, and more specifically how war has woven in and out of and affected her. And so thank you, Vivian, very much. We really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Good. Why don't you just tell me a little bit about what you were doing before the war came along? Or let me back up a tiny bit more.
Okay.
Since you're an Otter Tail County
Okay.
person that was born here and stuff, let's just really quickly skim through a tiny bit of that, just out of local history interest. You said you were born
In Otter Tail County, yes. On a farm, of course. I grew up on a farm. I started school when I was 5 years old, and I couldn't even speak English. I don't know how I managed to skip first grade, but I did, in a country school. And went on to high school and to a business college in Minneapolis. And and in the school itself, I should say, we took civil service exams. And sure, I passed, and I could go to Washington, D.C. to sell war bonds. You know, this was just before the war started. But I didn't. Instead, I took a job at a local bank, and bookkeeper at the bank. And then when I turned 20, this is when you could join the Waves or the WACs or whatever. And so I went through all the proper procedure for what they required of your history of your own life, and to make sure that you qualified to join the Waves, and letters of references. And I sent everything in, and they sent me a bus ticket to come to Minneapolis to be sworn in, and I returned the bus ticket. Decided not to go. So instead I went out west to a little town called Fife, F-I-F-E, in the state of Washington, to some friends that I had met. And the first thing I did was look for a job, and that was when I started at Boeing Aircraft in Seattle. And like I say, I lived in this little town of Fife, and I was only just about a half a block away from the Century Ballroom, which was a ballroom where all the big name bands came, like Tommy Dorsey and all those back then.
Even though it was such a small town, they would come to that ballroom.
Oh yes, but it was like a little suburb between Tacoma and Seattle. I'm sure it's still there on the main highway. So I rode the bus every day over to Boeing in Seattle. And yes, they called us Rosie the Riveter. And but it was a long way over there. It was 30 miles one way, riding on a bus. Then I went to the Todd shipyard, which was in Tacoma. And of course, they were hiring naturally. And so I went to school for 6 weeks to learn to be a welder.
That's great. That is so great.
You wore big old leather clothes, but I welded right out on the aircraft carriers as they were built. See, and then we pulled these big long leads out, and it was hard work.
You are a genuine, bona fide Rosie the Riveter. Wow, this is what I've been wanting to talk to someone. Wow, this is great. I'm sorry I'm interrupting, but I'm just a little too overjoyed to let that pass by. So.
But it was fun, and you met a lot of people from other states because they were all out there working in the war plants, And I enjoyed that. I think I forget what they called me. I think I was called Swede, being I was from Minnesota.
Now, as far as they sent you a bus ticket, and then you just, I'm just kind of going to back up, and then we'll just kind of flesh out a little bit of the stuff that you mentioned. In fact, there was one question. Oh yes, before I forgot about it, just on along the lines of local color or local history stuff. You mentioned that you now live on property that your great-grandfather homesteaded?
Just one great.
Okay, that your great-grandfather homesteaded in roughly?
1869.
16.
In fact, it was a couple, let's see, it was it would be a section, wouldn't it? It would be a quarter of a section in section 1, and then they joined, the corners joined, and another 160 acres down there. So, and this is where the lake was, and I can't imagine how they ever made farmland out of that, but that's what they did, the Swedes, and they came to wherever it was familiar in their own country, looked like,
Yep,
the
like
land.
Sweden.
Yeah. But where I'm at, there's still 90 acres of woods, but the woods is called Ruskaskogen, which means, Ruska was the name of a man, and Skogen means woods. And this person, he just he could not hack it, so he gave up on it, and it was too much work cutting down those big oak trees. That's why it was called Ruskaskogen. That's where I live. That's where I'm at.
Okay. So you're not, well, let me clarify. Well, first of all, I was just going to say it's kind of interesting because like Pennsylvania was William Penn's woods.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah,
this is so-and-so's woods.
Ruskaskogen, yeah.
Yeah. So the property you are now on is the Ruskaskogen?
Yes.
That at one time became part of your great-grandfather's
Oh,
homestead?
yes.
Then when the
Oh,
other
it
man
was.
left?
Definitely, yes, it was.
Okay. And
There's still a building standing on the one part. It's a log cabin with an upstairs to it, and it's got a driveway built of stones, and then a driveway built up. So that's how you drive up to the upstairs, and the door opens, and it's all logs, and it's way back there. It's when that he did that.
And it's still standing?
It's still standing. In fact, I sent a picture into the Lake Region Electric here. I suppose it's been 5 years ago now when they started making that calendar and sending out, so the picture got in on the calendar.
Imagine. Is it in reasonably good condition still?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. You are so lucky.
Yeah, right.
Wow. Now, has the property you're on now remained in family hands
Yes.
all the way through?
Yes.
That is so neat to hear. And this, excuse
Yes.
me for using the term in this day and age, but I mean,
Yeah.
in this day and age, to hear of a family that has been on the same property
Yeah.
for that period of time with roots and
Yeah,
all
my
that.
mom was born there that same, on that same land, not the same house, of course, but
So you were daughter of second generation?
daughter of,
Swedes? In other words, your mom was
Well,
born
let's
here
see.
in the United States.
yes.
Okay.
But my grandpa came over, and my great grandpa, they came
Okay.
over, yeah.
Oh, so
Okay.
third gen, yeah, okay, daughter, okay, wow, yeah, that
So would
goes,
that be third or fourth?
goes way back. Well, you'd be fourth generation
Right.
then, yeah, I guess I worded it kind of convolutedly, but I was saying you were the daughter of a such and such generation, so that's where I was getting the third, but yeah, so you're a fourth generation then.
And then I have, the sixth generation living with me.
Your grandson is,
Yes.
the grandson you spoke of is still
Yes.
living there then, or is living there right now?
Yes.
Oh, wow. 6 generations on
Yeah,
one
it's
piece
pretty
of
long,
property.
isn't it?
That is really neat, and especially with that structure still standing.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk to you more about that. I could talk a long time about that, but I suppose I better discipline myself and head back to the things that pertain a little bit more to the war. The first time around you sent the bus thing back, that was just for a
Yes.
civil servant test?
No,
at
that
time.
was for actual going down to Minneapolis to be sworn in as a wave.
As a wave, so it
Yes.
was specifically for the wave?
Yes.
Okay.
The civil service exam I took, I'm one of these that like to know you can do things and then don't do them. Not very nice, I know, but
Well, no, you certainly were entitled to make the decision that was fit for you. What amount of time between that and when you actually did wind up joining the Waves?
I did not join the Waves. I sent the bus ticket back and did not join.
Right.
And
okay.
I had to be 20 then. See, I had all the information they needed before I turned 20, so that when I turned 20, I sent it in and sent it back.
Okay, I understand now. Okay, so then, of
And
course.
then I went right out to the state of Washington.
Okay. Okay, and then in Fife, the little town Fife. Now,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I cannot resist this, but it wasn't founded by Barney, was it? Just wanted to check.
The really only thing was there was this ballroom, unless it's changed.
That's what I was going to ask, is what
Yeah.
the town was composed of, or how many people in the area.
Big round one with booths all the way around the outside, and a nice floor in the center. I mean, it was big.
Did you probably got to see some of the big name bands?
Oh, yes.
Then? Tommy
Yeah.
Dorsey.
Yes.
And trying to think of some of the others.
Well, there was the Jimmy Dorsey too, I do believe.
Okay, yeah.
Oh,
I'm
I didn't
drawing a
come
blank
very
right
well
now. No,
thinking
no.
about that either.
Well, I don't think it was. You probably weren't thinking. I was going to be asking you about that anyway. I'm blanking out on the big name bands, but that's really wild. And it was pretty much just the what was the name of it again? The dance hall.
Century.
The Century. Do you recall if there was any kind of a cafe or other? Were there homes there, or it was?
Well, yeah, I stayed at a house that was only about a half a block away from there, so it was all residential around there, except for this one block area, that.
Right. But to go for groceries or to market or go out.
I
someplace
do
else,
not remember
maybe.
if there was a grocery store there.
Okay. And were you kind of rooming as a boarder?
I was room and not board. It was just a room, just a sleeping room, because I could eat at work, And there was a restaurant there. That's right. And if I remember right, it seemed like it was called the Dogwood. That sounds like a terrible name for a restaurant, but
It does kind of.
Yeah.
But I think there's a plant named Dogwood Plant or something out
Yes.
there. I used to live out in Oregon, so I think that's probably what they named it.
could be.
after, but-
Could very well be, couldn't
Yeah.
it?
Now, you had moved out there not intending even to go to work for Boeing. Is that correct, or was that?
I didn't
kind
know
of-
what I was going to do.
Right. That's. I mean,
Yes.
you were just went out west.
Yep.
And you had friends there. You said.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Stayed with them at first.
Stayed with them about a month, and then found my own place,
Uh-huh.
and found the job at the same time, of course. So
You could kind of make ends meet.
yes.
And you were so highly paid back then. I can't believe it. You
Isn't that terrific?
You showed us. Was that from Boeing, or
Wanna
which
see
one
it?
was that from? Yes, I'd like
This
to see
is Todd Shipyards.
Oh, Todd Shipyards. Okay.
It says Seattle Tacoma Shipping Building Corporation, but it is Tacoma Division, it says here. Yes, for 45 hours, I grossed $54.34.
And out of that, for the war bonds, you were.
$4.75.
That's a
So I mean, that was voluntary.
Right.
It wasn't compulsory that you took out that much. But I wonder where those war bonds are. Really, seriously.
Wow, it might be worth some shekels if you've still got some hidden away somewhere. Checking the attic of that log cabin out there. Wow.
This is in 1943. This certain check here.
October or something. was
October
it?
31st.
Yes.
So
Halloween.
I cleared $40.44
$40.44
for 45 hours.
45 hours. Just amazing, truly. The first job was Boeing, though. I kind of jumped ahead with that because that was the
Yes.
top shipyards. But
I wasn't there many months due to the fact that it was a long ways to ride.
mainly
at
the
that time.
30-mile
Yeah,
trip was
one
getting
way.
old.
Yeah.
Definitely would. What did you do on the bus ride? Are you a reader? Did you?
No, I think we just,
There'd be friends along to
yeah, right.
chit chat with and such. Okay.
Yeah.
And what were your duties at Boeing?
Well, just more or less on the production line.
Don't recall any certain.
Nothing
parts and-
exciting, no. Nothing really.
Uh-huh.
No,
Okay, maybe assembling things or something along.
yeah.
Who knows? But a production
right,
line
that's right,
approach to it.
yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure we never knew what the pieces were,
Right,
or what they
there
belonged to.
Wouldn't be any reason, for you
No.
to have a schematic of an entire plane in there.
Yeah, right.
Right. And then, so for a few months, you think that probably was at Boeing? And what about, how did you learn about or get the, now, location-wise, the Todd Shipyard was closer to you?
Oh,
then?
yes, that was in Tacoma.
Excuse me,
See.
okay.
And, yes. And I moved from this place too and got an apartment on another area closer.
So you actively went to the Todd Shipyard hoping to get a job there so that it would be closer?
It was no problem getting work out there. See, they wanted people from all over to come out there. I mean, that was those that couldn't serve in the service, you know, why they would be out there, yeah.
So a lot of, as they called them, 4Fers would have been out working with you?
Or draft dodgers, maybe.
Draft dodgers
I don't
too?
know.
Okay. So there were quite a few men, or?
Oh yeah, there was still quite a few men. I don't believe age was a factor. I don't know. I know I used to work the graveyard shift. That was from 11 until 7 in the morning, you know. And maybe ride home on the back of a motorcycle. And yeah, we got some fun times too out of it. It wasn't all work.
Well, I hope not. Oh, that's great. But quite a few women also worked with
Oh,
you.
yes, definitely. And I had to take a 6 weeks training course. And then you got to be a certified welder. You passed a test and learned how to weld stainless steel. That was a pretty, well, not really difficult, but
More technical.
it wasn't as simple as just regular welding. No.
And you said you went right out on the carriers and were
Yeah.
doing the welding?
Yes, we
In the
walked
shipyard
a
there.
plank to out there. Yeah, the bay was right there, so that's where they built them and repaired them. And we'd see other ships come in from England, or you know, could always tell them and tell who the sailors were due to their caps, you know. And there were battleships that came in there. Yeah, it wasn't just a big area that they built. Aircraft carriers. It was large enough so there was ships coming in from.
Were all of your duties on new ships that were being built?
Yeah.
Or you didn't ever wind up needing to go do repairs
No.
or any of that?
No.
What kind of recreation? I mean, if it was, you know, the visual of sailors coming in and out all the time and everything, I mean, there must have been quite an active social life in the area.
A bunch of us used to ride a bus out from Tacoma out to Fort Lewis. And I'm not sure what they were called. I keep thinking SOS, but that can't be right. These big name bands would be out there volunteering their time, you know, and we'd go out there and dance with the soldiers. That's what we went there for.
Bet you were pretty popular.
Got to be a good dancer too.
That's so. That's neat. The initials you were trying to think of. Oh, you mean you didn't mean like the Bob Hope, the initials for the show.
It was something, but I want to say SOS, but that sounds so far out, you know.
What is that?
To me, SOS means save.
Yeah, exactly. I can
you know,
almost
save.
say. Do you know what I'm fishing for? Do you know what we're? You know, Bob Hope would go on these tours, and it was something OS. What is it? That implied a show for the enlisted men or whatever. I can't think of it either.
No.
Yeah, maybe it'll pop into my brain. Probably after we're all done.
I suppose. But that was fun. I mean, they would give us a bus ride. You know, the bus would pick us up and bring us back, and so we were safe and sound. Yes.
Sure. So while you were working at the Todd Shipyard, then you had your own apartment by that time?
Oh yes.
Did they have a cafeteria that you still pretty much ate at the shipyard, or did you do cooking on your own?
I think we did. I naturally cooked in the apartment, but no, we carried our lunch. We carried our bag lunch. I know
Oh, you
that.
did?
Oh
Okay.
yes.
Okay, so then did you wind up, I'm just gonna set that down there so I don't accidentally leave it in my things and walk off with it. Did you would have had to deal with ration coupons to buy
Oh,
your,
yes. Um, in fact, I did have a couple of them in my scrapbook. Um, some were coupons like that size, you know. And yes, you had to have it for sugar and for uh, liquor if you were, and for tires. And it was terrible to get tires. I ended up, when I left, when I did leave Washington, I went down to San Diego, and I had a 36, a Roadster. I don't know what the make of it was. I've got pictures of it, but I've never really asked anybody, what was this anyway, Studebaker or something? You know, it wasn't no Ford or Chevrolet, but it had a rumble seat in the back, you know.
I heard that coming when you said Roadster, how neat. Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty neat. And but you see, you could not buy manufactured tires. You had to buy recaps, or retreads they called them. And you know, I mean, they didn't last like a regular tire did. So
Save those ration coupons. Did people
yeah.
that, well, I suppose people that didn't have a car didn't get that type of ration coupon, is that how?
No, that's true.
So it wasn't like you could borrow or get some coupons
Well,
from a friend that
if
didn't have a
somebody
car?
didn't use them, you know, of course. I mean, that could easily happen, especially on the liquor part.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
true.
you know,
Exactly.
I had no use for them, so that was something to give away.
Now, did you pretty much had an, I mean, your civilian life was totally separate from working at the shipyard.
Yeah.
You didn't have any requirements of having to be there other than just to come do your work for a certain shift and then come back and such. So you were free to be active in whatever, I don't mean active in a community, that wasn't the time of, those times were not times when you had been out there doing that. You could have done that, but I mean, if you wanted to go to your own church services, or if you wanted to go to a movie or a play or any of those things, you were free to do
Oh,
that.
yes.
Was there much of that provided in the area?
Yes, I would say so, yeah. I know we'd get our paychecks on the Saturday morning, 7 o'clock, go home and change our clothes and be down and spend our money at the stores right away on
When they
Saturday
opened up.
morning. Yes.
I'll bet those stores were raring to open up on Saturday mornings.
It's just like the tourists around here when they're here in the summertime, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
The rationing, let's see how I ask about that again. Oh no, it wasn't rationing. I was thinking of it was. Did you have to do any blackout drills, or was there ever an issue of, you know, covering your windows for light and things like that?
Not really. No,
Wow, that just amazes
not
me. At
really.
a
There.
key place like that, I would have
Yeah.
thought, you know, maybe it was so far away and they had no reason to think anybody was in that area, but I would have thought.
You know, this probably isn't the right thing to say, but I'm sure you've read about how at that time, how the Japanese living out there along the West Coast were.
Internment camps.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, this really sounds terrible, you know,
Well, it
when you
was.
think about it now. Yes.
It's a rather shameful part of our history, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I wasn't there, and I guess you shouldn't be judging others, but I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
it is really amazing that the United
But it was,
States did that.
you know, I don't know if that happened after Pearl Harbor.
I believe
You
so.
know, I mean, they were suspicious of people living on the coast, you know.
Mhm.
And now I have a daughter-in-law who's full-blooded Japanese, you know.
Mhm. Regular human beings like the rest of us.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, there's a lot of different things a person hears about. I mean, even that you probably know more about this than I would, but they were sending German prisoners over into North Dakota, and you know about that,
Well,
I'm
go
sure.
ahead and tell
But
me
I don't
you
know.
know
I
about
don't
that.
know
Yeah,
where it is
that
though.
intrigued me.
But I've read about it, but that's about all.
Mm-hmm.
It's surprising, that they would send German prisoners to a small town in North Dakota.
And if I understand correctly, they had them do work, but they were treated really
Yeah,
well and almost became real friendly. I mean,
I'm
these are the
sure.
few things that I've heard. But yes, I never knew that
Yeah.
before I started doing this work, and I was very
Mm-hmm.
surprised at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember where you were when Pearl Harbor happened?
That was in 41,
41.
December 7th, 41. Yes, I was going to school in Minneapolis, American Business College,
And that was when you were doing the business
3108 Nicollet, yeah. Yeah, I, I took a secretarial course, and of course I wanted to quit every weekend I came home, and was more or less, got to finish. So I hurry up and finished a 1-year course in 7 months, and you were on your own as far as the work went.
Okay, so you could pace yourself and just however much you
Yeah.
would drive yourself to get
That's
done.
right.
You were able to come home most weekends, though? Or
Oh yes.
clear up to here?
I made it a point of coming home. Yes, you bet.
Did you have your own car?
No, I rode the bus
Oh, okay.
from Fergus Falls to Minneapolis. I lived with an aunt who didn't have a husband, and yeah, it was. She worked way down on Lake Street and rode the streetcars, and I would ride the streetcars down there to her. And,
The streetcars.
yeah.
That just sounds so nostalgic to me, to think of the streetcars in Minneapolis or whatever. It's so different now.
Well, they might have some before you know it.
Yes.
The way it sounds.
If we get our act together, we'll start getting some mass transit going that works. Wouldn't that be amazing if Minneapolis actually caught up to other major metros and had some kind of mass transit that worked? Yeah. When Pearl Harbor happened, do you remember anything about actually hearing about it? Or?
Well, like I say, I know we were at school, and but I don't think we got too excited about it.
You were at school when you heard of it? Wasn't it on a Sunday? Or maybe I'm confused on that part.
I think it was a Sunday.
Sunday morning, but you didn't.
We weren't in school. No,
Oh, okay.
no.
Yeah.
School the next day.
Yeah, people were no doubt talking about it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really a big topic.
Well, I don't know. I imagine we were all a little scared, and hearing about this. Why, it certainly wasn't very pleasant.
Did you have any relatives, brothers, cousins?
No, I only had one brother, and no, they were farmers. So, but I did have a cousin, yes, from this same aunt I referred to, her son, and he lost his life in North Africa. Yeah. Yeah.
Was he drafted after Pearl Harbor?
He was with I think he was with the CC camp to start with, and then went into service from there. I mean, volunteered.
So you don't recall the aunt being upset about it or anything?
Oh,
because,
yes.
No, I mean, not obviously about him
Yeah.
losing, but I mean when Pearl Harbor happened, as far as worrying that he would be drafted.
Well, I'm sure she was.
Mhm.
You can remember that's
It's a couple years
a
ago.
long time ago.
Very much so, yeah. You're doing great. You're doing great.
That is 60 years ago, isn't it?
41?
Sure
Yes,
it is,
62
too.
years ago. Wow. That's amazing. But as far as other family members, your family?
No, when I went down Highway 5 there along the coast to San Diego,
Oh yeah, the 5 as they call it now. Mhm.
and I had a friend with me, a girlfriend with me, and she went down and met her future husband is what he turned out to be, and he came in also, not on the same ship or anything. But I went down and met my future husband, and he came into Oceanside, and then we were married down there, married in Tijuana.
Were you really?
And I've looked at that marriage license so many times, wondering, is it really real, I wonder? Because it was all in Spanish, you know, it wasn't English.
Am I really married or not? Huh?
Yeah, there was times I wish it wasn't. Oh, dear.
I was wondering if you had met your husband to
Yes,
be.
yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I tell you, this was, I was going with another sailor from Eureka, California out there, and he was being shipped out, so he brought this other friend of his over. And when this one was shipped out, why then this other fellow started calling and coming over, and that's the guy that I went down to San Diego and met, married. And had my little roadster down there and those bad tires, and he didn't even know how to change a tire. We'd have flat tires along the highway, and I'd be changing the tire, and he'd be sitting up on the bank watching me.
Well, you were a Rosie the Riveter.
Yeah, right,
all.
I imagine that has something to do with it.
That's great. Now, where were you living when you drove down and met him down there then?
Tacoma.
Yeah, so that was quite a ways.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So let me see if I'm understanding correctly. The sailor that you had been dating had been in Tacoma.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And then when he was shipped out, he introduced you to. Now, what was his name, or maybe we use the first name, or of your husband, or
Donald.
Donald. Okay, so he introduced you to Donald.
Right.
But Donald was stationed down
At the
south?
same place he was, and no, then he was shipped out also. And then when he came in, after being out, he came into Oceanside.
Oh, okay. Okay, and that's when you drove down?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what were relatives back home thinking of all of this?
I can't imagine. I don't know.
Were your parents alive still at the
Oh,
time?
yes.
And
Oh, yes.
Still on the farm?
Oh, yes, very much so. They were alive for 46 years later even. Yeah.
Something to be said for that good, healthy farm life,
I think so. I mean, all that butter and cream they ate, you know, explain that, you know, that's
Exactly.
impossible.
That's something. I suppose the hard work you do kind of compensates
Yes,
for that. I
I'm
would think.
sure.
Do you recall, what was news coverage like for you? Do you feel like you were more in touch with hearing news events about the war because of working at, say, the shipyard than you were other people? Do you think things got to your ears sooner because of that in any way?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, there's always talk. I'm sure that when we were at work, we no doubt had drill, you know,
Emergency procedure type thing?
sirens blowing and, you know, taking cover. I'm sure that we were, you know, trained to what to do in case of it. You know, being we were that close to Puget Sound is what the area was. I'm quite sure. I could be wrong on that, but.
But for news, you relied on the radio basically.
Oh, yes.
As anyone else was.
Sure.
Do you recall hearing? Well, I'm getting ahead of myself, but do you recall hearing about VE Day? Like, do you remember?
We used to hear what was her name? Rose. That spoke to the servicemen, you know, trying to
I know who you
convince
mean.
them. Yeah.
And do you recall hearing about Hitler surrendering then?
Oh yeah.
Do you recall anything going on around you? Was there celebration? Were people pretty much their normal selves? Do you?
Pretty much enormous. Well, of course, I probably had left out there then, you know, I mean, this was 45.
Right, that's true.
So, and you know, the war was over with in May and August, I believe it was, at 45.
And
So I was back in Otter Tail County then.
you were back by then to Otter
Yeah.
Tail County. Okay, so when did you wind up quitting at the shipyards, or when were you down
Well,
there?
I suppose in the winter of 45.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it wasn't until after VE and VJ Day that
No, it was-
you were done.
It was before that.
Well, that's what I was
before
puzzling.
that,
That's what I
yeah.
thought you were saying, and yet.
Yeah, like I probably quit out there in like January, we'll say, of 45.
Oh, I understand what you mean.
And then I can remember that.
Yeah.
What happened in April? It was April
Was that
of
the atomic
45.
bomb?
Yes, and wasn't that when the president died?
Oh, that's right. Roosevelt died.
Franklin Roosevelt.
That's right. Okay, maybe
I think that was April 45.
Okay. I'm not real good
So-
with facts, figures, and dates myself. So
So that Truman took over then.
right. But it was Roosevelt that ordered
I
the
believe.
dropping of the bomb.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I guess the bomb would have been prior to that. Then, so,
Okay.
yeah. Okay.
I
You couldn't
see.
prove dates or times by me. That's for sure. I love interviewing people and hearing all about this, but I'm not a history buff that has got all these things memorized. I've just never was my strong point, I guess you'd say. So. Now I understand what you meant, though. Winter of 45. I thought you meant at the end of 45. At the
Okay.
very beginning,
Yes.
in the winter part of 45 is when you came back to Otter Tail County then. And
Well, no, I didn't come back until about, I suppose about May of that year.
okay, that was when you were
Yeah.
quitting at the shipyards,
Yeah.
but then weren't back here until
Right.
roughly May or so. Okay, and you and your husband came back together?
Oh, no, he was still in the service.
Okay.
So when he was shipped out again, then I came home back here.
Where was he sent to at that point?
Oh, who knows? He was in the Navy, so I mean,
Got
it
around
would
all
just
over.
be on a ship, you know.
What was it like being married to a man in the service?
It wasn't that bad. I mean, it wasn't that long a time. I mean, he was a person that joined when he was 17. So he was through then when he was 20 or 21.
Okay. How many months was he still in the service after you had gotten married, though?
Probably about 9 months.
Okay, so you didn't spend a great deal of time
No,
as
and
the
he was
wife
out.
of a
He was
service
gone,
person.
so there was no physical contact. No, I was home riding the tractor, and which was no hired help around, for the farm. So
Were you able to keep fairly well in touch with your husband?
oh yes,
And
I've saved a lot of letters.
that's good.
Free mail. That they had free mail.
That was a wonderful thing that they had, I feel. Yeah, that's for sure. Do you remember anything specifically about back home, hearing about anything back here concerning your parents or anything during the war, as far as how it impacted them or anything?
Well, it was just that it was hard to get farm help, and otherwise I think things were pretty normal.
And then when you wound up coming back, the men hadn't en masse been released out of the services, so
No.
there still was no help. And that's how you wound up on a tractor.
That's right, for that summer, yes.
What did it feel like to be back on, or had you been on a tractor before you left? Or was that one of your duties, or?
No, I never really had a chance to.
So that was a different role for you to
Yeah.
play when you returned
Yeah.
then.
And I mean, very foolish, you know. You sit out, you're out there all day long in that hot sun, and you know, and you don't have anything on your head, or you know, there was no sunscreen, and so I'm suffering for it now. I mean, not suffering, but I mean it's showing up.
I think in our youth we all, well, I should speak for myself, but I certainly abused the sun too. I love being out in the sun. And I should have known better.
Yeah.
Or at least somewhat. When I was a real young kid, you never heard about that. But what did it feel like to be on a tractor in the middle of somewhat northern Minnesota after all of the experiences you had had?
Oh, it was kind of fun. You know, it was at the time you didn't have combines, you know. You were pulling a binder behind you or cutting with a big wheel. And my dad was on the binder. And he wanted sharp corners, you know. Nothing, you know, nothing left standing, just good sharp corners. And I used to have more fun with that. I mean, you had one of these knobs on the steering wheel, you know, that you could go like this, you know. And I would get up there and I'd turn this thing and the binder would fly back, you know, and get ready to go on the next one. Yeah, I made sharp corners all right for him. Of course, you could do it. I mean, you could throw them off too, you know. It wasn't probably too safe, but he got his sharp corners.
And a little more. Oh, that's great. What was it like when all of the men did start returning? Was it?
Well, I think they more or less went back to what they were doing before.
I've heard some women had gotten used to working and then, you know, their jobs would be taken back over and they were out of work or something, but I guess that wouldn't really apply.
That was all right. I do think that business places made that effort before they left, that their job was waiting for them when they came back.
Right, yes. No, that was a good thing, definitely.
Yeah.
Also, it impacted the women too, though, is how I was, you know.
Well, I imagine some got pretty independent, you know, earning big money, and I'm sure there was a lot of mishaps in marriages due to the money part of it, you know, working.
Yeah. Prior to that, it was pretty much the good old boy, man rules the roost and all that kind of thing, and the women found more of themselves, fortunately. So.
And I wasn't allowed to go out and work. It was okay if I did my own thing at home or whatever. So I used to do a lot of goofy things to make money in, because he didn't want me to go out and work.
Didn't want you having a job.
That's right, but I could do what I want. I used to. Well,
tell me about a couple of your schemes. It's a little off topic, but it sounds kind of fun.
I can remember buying a electric sewing machine, one of those that was remade from a pedal or treadle, I should have said,
converted,
and you set it on the table, and that's how you sewed. And I made wedding dresses, bridesmaid dresses. Sometimes I never even saw the person. So I mean, that's what I did. And I remember having in this one place where I had a showcase like for baked goods, and you know, I'd get up and during the night and set my bread and, you know, really, and have the stuff over there when they opened up at 7 o'clock in the morning, put in the showcase. That sounds like a lot of work, and it was.
It does.
And I remember once going and buying a 100-pound sack of navy beans. 100-pound sack, you know.
That's a lot of beans, especially when you soak them up. What did you do with those?
Well, I would get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and put them in upper and lower in the oven, you know, ready to, after I put my ingredients into it, they'd bake. And in the morning, then I would have gotten these little cardboard wax-covered little cartons with a little wire handle on,
Chinese,
you know.
food carryout.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would either fill those up, or otherwise, I can remember some restaurants wanted them in gallon jars, and I had places to deliver my beans.
Boy, we're talking industrious. That's really impressive. Wow.
Well, it sounds kind of dumb, I imagine, but
No, it doesn't to me at all. I'm pretty impressed. I really am. Now, would that have been locally that you delivered to restaurants from?
We lived in St. Cloud for a while.
Okay.
And it was there. And then we moved to Alexandria. My husband was having trouble because he was having epilepsy attacks. And we never could prove this to be service connected. We tried, but it was not accepted. And so he would lose a job because of that, you know. And so I had to be doing something. So anyway,
kind of keep things going.
Then I think my biggest venture was this was in 1949. I got involved in real estate in 49.
That was a good time to be starting to get involved in real estate, I would think, wasn't it?
And so I became you don't want this on your record.
Yes, I sure do.
I became the first woman real estate broker in Minnesota.
Yeah! All right. I bet I want that on the tape.
Dear.
Really?
Yes.
That is...
First woman real estate broker in Minnesota.
Wow.
And so then now we're living in Columbia Heights. Now we're living in Columbia Heights. And, well, one year, this was about, see, my husband passed away in 1964. And so this was about 1960. I contracted and built 8 houses one year. Yeah.
Were you ahead of your time or what?
I don't know, but anyway, I certainly depended. I had 4 children before he died, and I never had any help from welfare or anything. I had these. My youngest one, I believe he was 9 when my husband passed away, and the oldest was 17. And I just made sure that I had a commission coming in every month. You know, so
Boy, it's not like you didn't have anything to do while you, I mean, that many, you know, kids on the home front's enough to do, let alone running all that. Wow. Now, did any of your children ever go into the service?
No.
You said you still got a lot to do. What's ahead?
What have I got to do? Well,
what's Vivian going to be up to in the next
well,
year or 2
it has to do with real estate, yes.
Really? Okay.
But I don't have a license anymore. I mean, I terminated that. I mean, things got kind of difficult there, changing. Things got changed. And when I moved up here, of course, I had lake lots. I surveyed and took care of that. And
but you have some development in
well,
mind or something?
No, I got 14 lots out of there. But that's all taken care of. That's over and done with. Mm-hmm. Gave a few away. But I have an apartment building that I bought about 5 years ago. The bank still okayed me.
It sounds like you got a pretty good track record. I'm not too surprised.
So I'm really looking forward to disposing of it next year.
Kind of simplifying things
Just
a bit.
getting tired of it. You know, they're good people and all that. It's all seniors. But no, it's just like anything else. You've had something going. Usually 7 years is the time I feel that people make changes. I don't care what it is, if it's you're going to quit having a garden or whatever, it's 7 years, you know.
Okay.
First time home buyer, 7 years.
So you think your 7 years are up on that pretty soon?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Well, I thought of a great title for this interview. We don't normally title them, and this is somewhat tongue-in-cheek or whatever, but how does this sound, Wendy? From welding to wedding dresses. What a gamut.
Oh.
From wedding to wedding dresses. Wow. That is really something. Well, what have I forgotten to ask you? Anything that
I can't imagine. I think I have said more than I was expected to say.
No. We love just whatever you want to tell us. We appreciate it.
But
So.
you can always strike it out.
No. Wendy, any thoughts come to your mind that you wanted to find out more about or anything?
I was kind of curious where the children came in. Where were you living?
I lived in the same house in Columbia Heights, a house that we built. And that's the house I left when I moved up here, which has now been 20 years ago.
That you've moved up here?
Yes, and I lived in that house for 28 years. And that's where all the kids were. No, all the kids weren't born there, I take that back. But I mean, they all went to school there in Columbia Heights all their years. And so when I moved up here, there was only 3 left of the family of 6, you know. The 2 boys.
And you probably should tell us about how Golden Pond got named, and then we'll let you go.
Oh, really? All right. I live on a lake, but it's on a hill. I live on a hill, so there's water on 3 sides, and on the east side it's really a large pond. It's got points of woods coming out into it, and so when I moved up here, like I say, 20 years ago, I had a grandson I took with me, whose mother was not living, and he was 10 at the time. And this was just when that movie on Golden Pond was out, and it was the grandma, you know, and the 10-year-old grandson. So that's where that came from.
I just think that's so cool. And it's known by Golden Pond and Golden Pond. You even said you would get mail sometimes.
Yes. Some that know me would write Golden Pond and then the zip code. And, yeah.
And it would get to
terrific.
Well, thank you so much, Vivian.
Well,
really
you're very
appreciate
welcome.
It. It's been great. It's been really fun hearing. And you've lived quite a varied life.
And sometimes I think it's so boring, you know, you got to get out there and find something else.
Well, might seem boring to the person that's lived it because it's nothing new to us, but when a person hears about it from the outside, it's
well, that's good.
Quite interesting.
That's good.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.